Hi, I'm Jacqui. Welcome to our Cozy Haven Book Club.
Hi, I'm Ashley, and we're excited to have you. This week, we're going to chat about The Power of Habit, Part 2, Chapters 4 through 7. Woo woo! These chapters were like, even though it's about habits, these are more like business habits and how they change habits. It's super cool.
Yeah, I guess we'll just get right into it. We're trying to make this concise today. So, Keystone habits is like the first thing that it kind of started chatting about in chapter 4. And a keystone habit is like am I saying this right? Like the main habit that changes other habits. Is
Yeah,
that right? Okay. Yeah.
I think
So
that's
like one of the examples was like working out and how people that started working out, like other habits of theirs started changing that didn't have anything to do with like the actual working out, but like other parts of their lives increased and like got better because of the working out. So it's like the first thing in the line of habits.
yeah. I think so. The chapter starts about this like president, I think it was the president or CEO, he takes over this company that had terrible numbers in safety. They're like something to do with like melting metals and they like have this like terrible numbers and like safety. Like there's always safety concerns. So he like changes how like they report safety and how they do safety and it like starts like lingering to people's like real life like in their life at home and like how they do stuff. And it's super interesting too like how he is like, well, if we change this, people are going to be happier at work, and obviously people are going to be happier because they're safer.
Yeah, I think people kind of thought he was crazy because when he came in, he didn't talk about like this is how we're going to increase our profits. He was like, no, this is how we're going to make the workplace safer. And everyone was like, but, but how are we going to increase profits? And he's like, we're going to make the workplace safer because when the workplace is safer, then less people are taking time off or are losing less material. Like all these different little things happen when people are safer. And so they thought he was crazy and he ended up like turning this entire company. It's like an aluminum melting,
Yeah.
whatever company, and he turned it all around because he focused on safety. And like part of it is, and I don't know if this, like, I mean, it does have to do with it, but he like let other people have their opinions too. Like it was like everyone gave, like if something happened, they had to like report it and everyone knew about it, which I think like nowadays, I mean, I guess it's more normal, but back then in the whatever long time ago, they didn't really have like internet, like email was just starting to be a thing. And so like they didn't really have that big communication.
Mhm.
But when they started like all communicating together and which is all trickle down because of him deciding to make it safer, like all
Yeah.
the things
They
change.
also talked about in this chapter about Michael Phillips and
Hmm.
how that I thought that was so interesting too, how he is like, as long as he did his routine every single day, which is his habit, it didn't matter what happened once he got out to swim, he was set for success because he did exactly the same routine every single time. So the one time something like happened, he wasn't like upset about it, he wasn't bugged about it, he wasn't frustrated. Like he was like, well, I did all my things ahead of time. Like I'm just gonna keep trying.
Yeah, they were so for Michael Phelps, they were giving like the example of well, I guess one of his swim meets, one of his like Olympic trial, or I guess it was just a trial. I don't know if it was the Olympics or like one of the world meet things, but um how he was swimming and his goggles completely filled with water to where he was like blind in the pool because he couldn't see anything. And because he over and over. Like he said that he had to imagine all of these different scenarios happening beforehand. So like he imagined like, oh, I can't see in the water. What do I do? Did they say they turned out the lights or something? Didn't they say they like somehow created? I don't know. Maybe I'm
He
just
said
making it
that
up.
he would like swim in the dark.
Oh, in
Like,
the dark. Yeah, see, I didn't make that up. But yeah, they created all of these scenarios for like, what if this happens? What do I do? And because of that, when that scenario happened of him being
mhm.
blind in the pool, he still set a world record time in that race because he had already imagined and like whenever something like happens that pushes us like out of what we think is going to happen, usually like almost like stop for a minute, stop for a second, and you're like, wait, what do I do now? But he didn't have that like in when you're swimming, like those few seconds matter. And so he didn't stop. He just was like, okay, I'll just do what I did before. And he just
Yeah.
kept going and world record. Yeah, that
I,
was so
I
interesting.
I love that part. And then, like I said, like how his routine created the mindset for him
Yes.
to like not get mad or frustrated. Like, as long as he, had his breakfast, listened to his music, like, it didn't even matter what was playing through his headphones. Like, it was part of the routine.
Yeah. Yeah. They said he did like a specific routine because it, didn't he had he just got frustrated easily or he had
Yeah.
something like I forget exactly what he had, but
But,
his coach knew that he had to fit a routine for Michael that would calm down his frustration and
mhm.
nerves and like put him in this calm space. So that was a big part of his routine every single morning was getting up and like doing the same thing so that he
Uh-huh.
felt comfortable and calm before he stepped in the pool.
It's like another example of just like how one thing will tr like go into the next thing, like how something so simple like one habit or like one little routine of habits can like change everything.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that part too.
It was,
Okay. Anything else from chapter four? Is that
I think we covered it. I think like chapter 4 was a good start of like success in a business through habits.
Yeah, it was mostly about keystones and kind of explaining what it was and how it, trickles into other parts of businesses or your life just by changing one thing can change a lot of other things in like a positive way. Yeah. Okay. I'm scrolling through my notes. We can go to chapter five.
Yes. Chapter 5 was Starbucks and like the habit of success.
Yeah.
And that one was a good one too. It didn't actually start with Starbucks. It actually started with this gentleman who his family, like his parents were addicts, like that's how he grew up. And he dropped out of high school, I think it was, and like he had multiple jobs and eventually he started at Starbucks. And the way Starbucks built their training system, they like install these habits in them that like if they get frustrated, like this is how they're going to handle it. If they do this, this is how they're going to handle it. So this guy that came from a place where you would think like he's not going to amount to anything because his parents are addicts, he didn't finish school, he can't hold a job down, literally became so successful because of the training practices of Starbucks.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same thing with Michael Phelps. Like it's like that similar where
Hmm.
they're like giving them the scenarios of if this happens, this is what I do. And so Michael Phelps also talked about how he visualized it. So it wasn't just like he was in it, he like also visualized these things happening so that he just went back to those, what do they call it? He pulled like the playbook or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, I think that was so interesting about the whole Starbucks thing. I was interested because they were talking about willpower. And I was like, wait, but how do I change my willpower? Like I wanted to know for my personal self. I'm like, how do we like make willpower different and make sure that I can like get things done? Because sometimes I find myself where I'm like, just don't feel like it. Like, how do we, battle that? So
Me like staring at the clock, being like, I have like 3 hours to do my I get to do list.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
But it's
Um,
interesting that like it willpower is a habit though. Like it's not just like something you're born with. Like we think like, oh, you have to strengthen it yourself.
yeah, they were talking about how the more you practice willpower, the easier it gets for everything in your life. And I was like, okay. So whenever I don't want to, I just need to like try because then it's going to be easier to get all the other things done that I don't feel like doing because you're like using that muscle, like becoming muscle memory of like, no, I am someone that like does the things and fights against my willpower. I thought that was interesting. I didn't realize you could like that willpower was I mean, I know it's willpower, so it seems like something that you can change yourself. But I just kind of thought it was like something that was there or not. I don't know.
No, it's interesting too. And I think that like I like how they talk. So the CEO from of Starbucks like dropped down, like he like whatever he like stepped out or whatever, like stepped down, and everything kind of like went bad after that. Like, right, they weren't practicing the same training practices anymore. And I like that example because it really it really says like if you're not continuing to practice the same habits, you're not continuing to practice the same things, you're not going to get the same results you were getting.
Great. Yeah. I thought, yeah, I agree.
So, and then like I said, and then like this guy that, obviously came from a house where, wasn't successful, right? He might have never been successful. Like he became successful with Starbucks. So like I think that's something also it shows that like people can change who you are by like teaching you their habits.
Yeah. I feel like I need to do that visualization more in my life. Like, if I'm feeling anxious, what do I do? If
Mhm.
that's just personally for me, like if I want to eat this blah, 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 but I'm not actually hungry, like what do I do?
Yeah.
And just like know what I'm supposed to be doing and not do the bad habits.
Yeah, I agree.
Trying to bring it into my own life.
Visualize it.
Visualizations.
Yeah. But I think like when we thought like we were gonna hear about Starbucks story, we didn't realize like we are hearing about like their training and like how they created all these habits in everyone to handle. And it's good to hear that like it's such a strong training method that like they're able to handle this. And it's not right, it's not just them trying to serve coffee, like they're trying to make a difference.
Yeah. And like again, just like the other aluminum plant or whatever, how they were had more say in like what they were doing. I one of my highlights that I put was giving employees a sense of agency, a feeling that they are in control, that they have genuine decision-making authority can radically increase how much energy and focus they bring to their jobs. And that's so true when we feel like when we're more in control of like whatever we're doing in our lives, like we're happier. Like we don't like as humans to feel out of control. So like
Yes.
how do we help ourselves feel in control, even if we're not in control? Like how do we help ourselves feel that way? Because we're going to be happier and less stressed and all the
Hmm.
things. And I'm just like trying to tie this to my own life in my own head. But when I'm doing things like planning out my week or like meal planning or meal prepping, when I'm doing things like that, I'm helping myself on a Tuesday when I'm frazzled and running around like a crazy person because my kids have to do all the things. I'm helping myself feel more in control because I've set myself up, you know,
Hmm.
trying to correlate it here.
No, I love that. I love that you're trying to give
Yeah.
a, like
Yeah.
an example we can understand better.
Trying to use my brain on a Sunday. Yeah, but I feel like when I feel in control, then I'm a happier person. So but I have to help myself do that. Like no one's going to set up my week for me. No one's going to force me to do some journaling this morning to set up my day and set up my mood and my mindset. Like no one's going to force me to do any of these things. And so it's me taking action to help myself when on a random day where I'm just feeling anxious for no apparent reason. It's not like anything happened, but I am doing these things to set myself up to feel more in control on those days. So,
I think like I like how so one of the things I highlight was like the actual definition of what they said what a willpower is. Like this like and how it is a habit is this is how willpower becomes a habit by choosing a certain behavior ahead of time and then following that routine when an infection point arrives.
yeah, when something throws you off and you're
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, I'm anxious now. I need to go eat something. No, I shouldn't eat it.
Yeah. I
I
like
should go
that though.
eat instead.
It like fits perfectly with what you're saying though. It just like the definition fits perfectly like what you're saying. And I think like we don't think about willpower like that, right?
Yeah. We think of it like we either, I mean, honestly, like my whole life, I was like, either have it or you don't. Like willpower. Like, I mean, you have it, but I don't know. I never thought it was something that you could grow and like change, I guess.
Hmm.
But you can. You can, you just have to practice it. You just have to do the things that you don't always want to do. And then it gets easier to do them the next time or to do other things that you don't really feel like doing. But you're like, oh, it's okay. Like I did this, so I'll just go ahead and start doing this. It's like when people say make your bed in the morning because it just like starts the ball rolling. And then you start doing other things that you're like, I didn't really feel like doing that, but I already made my bed. So I might as well just go jump in and do that. Like
Even
gets
though
it
like
going.
I'll never make my bed, I feel like.
I just like how our bed looks. All I do is pull the cover up, like, and throw the pillows on there. It's not gonna be anything crazy, but everyone's different. Sometimes, like for me, when I walk out in the morning and my table is clean, because I have kids and we use the table gets very loved and very used, and so when I come out in the morning and it's clean, I feel like my head feels just like so much better. So at nighttime, it's like my push, even though I'm so tired, to just try to clear it off, so that morning me wakes up and is like.
I feel like for me, like I feel like forcing myself to brush my teeth in the morning starts like the day for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like okay, I did this.
Yes.
I did.
Yeah, I wake up and immediately go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, wash my face, even though I'm like it's gonna be cold water. I mean, look, I'm complaining we're in Florida, but it's been chilly lately and our like our I don't know, our plumbing is like whatever. So it's cold. And then I put my watch on and then that like starts my day. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get my steps. And then I walk out and I have my journal already out there because that way I can just sit down and do it.
Yeah. Set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
Love it. Should we talk about chapter 6?
Yes. Let's move along. Chapter 6. This one was really interesting and like kind of scary. I felt like because it was talking about hospitals and like the power struggle between that this one specific Rhode Island hospital between nurses and doctors being like, this is my operating room and you won't tell me what to do to the nurses. And then the nurses would all like secretly be like, oh, make sure that you don't say this and this in front of this doctor because he'll like you know,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. Meanwhile, the doctors are not listening to the nurses and not following the procedures. And they're doing operations on the wrong side of someone's head, on the wrong arm, making so many mistakes and not listening.
It feels like too, like it shows like when you don't work as a team to create the habits together, you're not going to succeed.
You know, yeah, I was like, dang, I hope that if I ever have to have surgery, they follow procedures because that was kind of
Yeah.
nerve-wracking. But yeah, it talked about I don't know what the name of it is, but it's like how people create like I'm trying to say um like it's almost like there's like a secret like
So
when you go into a new job, I don't know what I'm trying to say. When you go into a new job and they teach you about the company, but then like behind the scenes, all the employees are like, make sure not to be like careful
yeah,
around this boss because they're gonna, they tell you like the real story.
that's me as a
Um,
trainer.
yeah, they tell you like the real story about like what to do, what not to do. Like they tell like the real thing that the company isn't gonna tell you. They were talking a lot about that with different companies. I don't know what the name. I'll think of it later. I'm trying to say, but it's similar with the whole nurse and doctor situation, how they kind of like made their own like little union, if you will. I feel like that's what I got out of chapter 6.
I think too, like something like I noticed is like these people, like these doctors had such bad habits because they thought they were in charge. And instead of creating like a like this like nice environment, they created this like hostile environment so like no one could succeed. I thought was like what I was getting off of that too. I think too, they obviously like learn from their mistakes to create new habits. So I think that's a big thing too, is like taking your bad habits and seeing that they're bad habits and creating new habits, right? And creating like this like how it should actually work.
Yeah. They were talking a lot about, I mean, obviously we were just saying, but like using a crisis to like reshape habits from like the organization. Is that the chapter that the train was that chapter 7? I don't remember if it was chapter 6 or chapter 7. We're talking about the it might have been chapter 7. So maybe I'm jumping ahead about the what is it, the train station. I forget which train station it
Oh,
was.
the
Not Grand Central. I don't know. One of the train
I
stations
think it
out.
was chapter 6. It was like in England though.
Yeah, a train station in England, and how, there were like four different groups of, like, I guess, hierarchy, not hierarchy, because they were all equal, but they were trying to keep like an equal balance of power. And so each department, that's what I'm trying to say, each department dealt with its own things. And so, like, no one crossed each other, like step on each other's toes, if you will. And so basically, someone had mentioned that there was a tissue on fire. And so this person that isn't in the department that handles anything related to if there was a fire in the train station, he went down there and put it out, but then didn't really say anything because he didn't. If you say something, then you're stepping on each other's toes. This was just like how it was laid out at the time. And anyway, it ended up being a huge fire and killing people and a lot of people. And it was like a whole debacle. And so the
Oh,
chapter was trying, sorry
I was
about.
gonna say also like the fact is like the train once it closed it wouldn't reopen even though there was a fire and like could have taken people
Right.
out.
They didn't have all these organizational plans in place for if a fire
Yeah.
took place and who was supposed to go where, because they were trying to keep it so like equal in power. And anyway, a bunch of people died. And so there, between that and the hospital thing where people were like cutting off wrong things of people's bodies, they were trying to say that through a crisis as big as that, a lot of the times it takes that to reshape habits for an organization. And I mean, it's the same as if when you're like, oh, it takes hitting rock bottom. Like, we hear that all the time. Like, it takes hitting rock bottom for someone to really want to change.
Mhm.
That's completely true. When you're finally sick of, or something happens in your life, that's when you start to change your habits, right? Like, people don't lose weight until they're finally sick of their size or how they're feeling or whatever's going on. Like, they don't do it until like rock bottom. So, same thing, right? I
Yeah,
think.
no, I think it's true. And I think like I kind of like this chapter reminds me of like what was happening with the aluminum factory in like the for chapter 4 before someone came in and changed the habits of the workers. Like, and that was the thing too. If we in the train story, the lady literally was like, well, I can't tell anyone about the tissue because then I'm like, not in the right, like I didn't do my job, like I'm doing someone else's job. But
Yeah.
like again, it's teamwork. Like so, and it's sad that people died from this, but like obviously that's how you learn. Like that's what they like learn to do it better.
Yeah. Oh, they were also talking about the Challenger that exploded at NASA. That was that was the thing that they decided, like, okay, we need to look at safety standards. But like, they didn't look at it until like a something crazy happens. And then they're like, oh, we should look at that, rather than making it a part of their routine and habits to continuously like monitor safety precautions, which clearly companies aren't doing. So
Nowadays, like obviously things are different. Like I feel like, this was like so long ago where like we were still learning. And I think too, like people have this mindset like maybe this won't happen,
right.
but obviously it
What
can't.
happens?
Just like the doctor that was like, no, I know I'm right. We need to do surgery right now on this guy's
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Even if the nurse was like, let's double check.
Yeah. And people don't like change. They
Hmm.
don't like it. And so companies don't like change. It takes a lot of effort to help people change habits and to change the company's organizational culture and habits. And so they don't want to put time and effort into it until something crazy happens, and then they're kind of forced to.
I think about like, okay, so like I don't know, this is what my brain keeps thinking about, like on this chapter, but like how SIDS is so popular, like like
Sudden infant.
but yeah, sudden infant death is so like it happens so much that like daycares now do like infant checks, like sleep checks, like every whatever it is, they check to make sure the child's still sleeping, right? Even when I was working at the hotels, like that was part of it too. Like we had to make sure the kids were breathing every couple, whatever it was. And so like I think like it's companies added these procedures, even though it might not happen and it hasn't happened to that company, we still have to do it.
Yeah. It's interesting, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that this chapter came after the one about how they were like
Hmm.
thinking of the scenarios before they happen.
Yeah.
This one came after because I'm like, wait, this one's kind of the opposite.
It is, and I something I like. I'm obviously my brain is like still like thinking about the first chapter, chapter 4, but something in there that was interesting too to me. So we're going back like a couple chapters, but something that was interesting in there too is when someone crossed the like safety line and died. They made literally had a huge meeting and made everyone watch this video multiple times to figure out how to fix this, so like make a solution to the problem. And I still like I think it's so interesting because that kind of feels like this chapter where they're like, okay, this is what happened. How do we come up with a solution?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I just thought about that. I'm like, huh.
So
Well, that was my chapter 6 notes. It was interesting, but
I will say I struggled in chapter 6, like reading game, like chapter
yeah.
5, I really struggled for game through.
I was like sad reading about the train thing. Like sad.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many people that could have like I just like the part where they were like the guy was like banging on the train to open it and they were like, no, you're late. The train's closed. The doors are closed.
Yeah. So they didn't realize that going back to that, they didn't realize that there was a fire because it was underneath the train station. And yeah, it just was like a whole
There's no
debacle.
procedures. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really sad. And someone that like I guess survived was like, I wish I would have had the like anyway, the quote, but they were like, I don't, why didn't anyone come? Like, why did it take so long or whatever? And even the firefighters, they were told to use the outside fire hydrants rather than the ones inside, which if they would have gone inside could have potentially saved more lives. So
Also, it was interesting that like they didn't have any way to communicate underground to the firemen. They had, like the guy had to
yeah,
go up. So
anyway,
let's
read
move on to a
it.
more the last chapter, chapter 7 in this part 2, was like a lot of it had to do with like how companies like look at your habits. It was so interesting though.
Yeah, it's very marketing. I felt like it was very marketing based, like how companies know what you're interested in
Hmm.
almost before you do. And literally the name of it is How Target Knows What You Want Before You Do. And I screenshotted it and sent it to my best friend Erin. And I was like, look, they do know. Like,
They
because
do know.
we always joke about like Target will just tell me what I need. And I mean, it's true. They have systems that track what you're buying, so they know what coupons to send you. And then we
Well,
feel like we're all getting the same thing, but we're not.
we're not. But it's also interesting because it's not just Target. Like every store
Right.
nowadays has so they were saying that your rewards card or like your store credit card tells you exactly what you're buying so they know what to send you like coupon
Yeah.
wise. And like everybody has a rewards card now. Like you think you're just like saving 50 cents. No, you're telling them, "Hey, this is what I buy every week."
Yeah. I mean,
And then
even
they send you
apps,
coupons to spend more money.
I mean, I don't know. They say our phones listen to us, and I believe that's true. Whether
Oh,
you do,
it's so
it's up
true.
to you, but like they'll start to see ads on what you're talking about, what you're thinking about, what you're looking up. I mean, they track everything. This was like, I don't know what year this was that they started doing all of this, but it was literally like mathematicians, like
Mhm.
statisticians, whatever. They were like crunching numbers and like I thought that was so interesting. I would not like that job, but I just thought it was interesting that they they did all that. Um, but yeah, even I guess can I talk about the Hey Ya song because I was just
Yeah.
telling you about it. So the song Hey Ya by Outkast, it had Grammys. It sold an enormous amount of CDs or whatever records. But when it first came out, so they had some sort of system where they would take the most popular songs and they wanted to understand like what about these songs made them so popular, the beats and whatever within the songs, the music. And so they created, I think, am I saying that wrong? I think they created Outcast based on some of that information. Pretty sure. If I'm wrong, sorry, but I'm pretty sure that's how I took it. And so they expected Hey Ya by Outkast to be a hit. And it wasn't when it first came out because the beginning, I don't know if it was just the beginning of it or the beat of it or whatever, was different than familiar songs that people would hear. And so they started they looked at what are the familiar songs, like anything by like Maroon 5 and just familiar, I guess, beats, even if it was things that people didn't necessarily
Yeah.
it was just familiar.
Well, they
And
were saying
so
too is that people don't have the like art like can't tell the difference between what they like and what they don't like. It's just what's familiar.
what's familiar. So it really doesn't have anything to do with what you like. It's what's familiar is what you're going to listen to. And say they noticed like people would turn off the radio when they heard Hey Ya. And so what they did was they started sandwiching it between a very popular song that people listened to, then Hey Ya, and then another popular song. And all the radio stations would do that. They said sometimes they even had the same song here and here and just the Hey Ya in the middle. And that it blew up. Like I just think that's so interesting.
I
And
think that's
so
so interesting too. Like the whole like they were calling them sticky songs, like songs that like no matter what like
yeah,
play. And so like it's interesting how Hey Ya became one of them.
yeah. Yeah. And they were talking about like the war. I don't know which war it was. I don't remember all details. One of the wars long time ago and how they were running out of meat. And so they were trying to get wives to start using like organs, like livers and things, because that's what they had. Like they were running out of meat. And people were like, no, that's not familiar at all. So we're not doing that. And then they started teaching wives how to take the organs and make them into something that tastes familiar. And then it became almost like maybe like a delicacy, but like it became very popular and
Yeah.
people started eating all these different things. That's apparently how it came about, supposedly according to the book.
I love that. I think also it's interesting too because like I feel like our generation doesn't really eat liver, but like our grandparents' generation did. So it
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Another thing that going back to the Target thing, but something that they said that was interesting too in that little section was that they noticed that people's habits when they walk into the store, so they're literally watching you when you walk into the store, is most people go right and how they put more stuff on the right side. So I'm saying they're thinking like, right, there's two entrances to my Target, and we usually enter where the food entrance is. And I think about it, there's like nothing on the left but like fruits and veggies, but on the right they have all their seasonal stuff. And
Most of the, I don't go into super Targets. However, when I go into Publix, like our grocery store, always go to the right. I never, but then again, they almost like direct you that way too, just
but
on like how everything is. But on Target that I go into, when you walk in, guess what's on your right hand side
that's
is
all.
the dollar spot.
Yes, but I also so
So,
I relate this to Disney because something like there's a theory with Disney that whenever the lines split, you go left, not right, because most people go right. And the reason like I was always told was because you most people are righties, not lefties.
I'm a lefty. Interesting.
So
Interesting.
but yeah, so everyone always says like at Disney go left, not right when you have the opportunity. And I'm like, wait, Target's literally saying the same thing. Like what? But
Yeah.
it was also interesting the whole Target. So I said this the last like recording, but I was saying like the Target story really stuck with me because I just think about like they literally would know you're pregnant based on your like things you're buying.
Yeah. They said
Like,
that they were starting to change their marketing and they would start sending people like because they were trying to tap into the mom and baby market because it's you when you have a new baby, you buy a bunch of new stuff. So like there's a lot of money there. And how they were like sending things to people, like coupons and stuff, and they were offended because they like didn't even tell anyone or didn't know that they were even pregnant and Target knew before they did. Not before they did, but like,
that'd be nice.
early on. And so that was like too creepy for people. So they had to start sandwiching the baby coupons and like
Yeah.
advertisements in between the regular stuff. So it seemed like, they were just advertising all the random things, but Ashley probably got baby stuff, whereas I probably didn't because she's actually pregnant and I'm not.
Yeah.
So we think that we're all getting the same advertisements, but we're not.
I
They are.
also I also love like when you like buy a toothbrush or something and like maybe like 3, 4 months later they send you like a coupon for that toothbrush and like they're reminding you like, hey, you should probably switch out your toothbrush. Like,
Yeah.
oh,
Amazing.
but I think all four of these chapters really showed what like how habits also like are not just like in your personal life, but at work. Like a lot of things you do are habits or the company creates such habits in you, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I
I thought the whole section was interesting about the Keystone habits and like what Keystone habits do I have that I can, start to change so that the other things in my life change. So that's something that I've been thinking about since
I
finishing the
just
second.
think about like everything in these four sections, like just like how can we fix something before it becomes a crisis? Like how if something becomes an issue, like how can we solve that for the, beginning? And I think about like how you can come from anywhere, anything, but if you create the right habits, you can go anywhere in any
Yeah.
place. I also think about like more and more about like obviously we do social media and we do network marketing, or like we did network marketing, we did all this other stuff, like how we show our habits and these habits can change other people's habits.
Yeah.
So I really like this book. I think it's so interesting because the first section was more personal. This section is more like how businesses work. And then we have two more chapters that will be next in 2 weeks. We'll discuss those with you all. So in those chapters, hold on a second, I'm gonna pull it up on my phone. They're called Part 3, The Habits of Society. So we get to see how like the whole as a society works. But I love this like breakdown, like personal work and then society.
The neurology of free will. Are we responsible for our habits?
Yeah.
Time will tell.
Time will tell. I think this is what do you think so far? Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it would be a lot like Atomic Habits, and it's not. It's got totally different information, and so I appreciated that because like, well, I've read Atomic Habits so many times, like I already know, but it has a lot different information that is really interesting that I liked.
I liked it too. I am glad we're reading it. And I think the last two I think like once we finish the book, we can really like create like a full on like habit summary. I think
Mhm.
though, just learning about different habits, how they change, how they do their things is amazing. And I'm excited to see you in 2 weeks to discuss it again. And
Okay.
we will see you every Wednesday for book club or for our conversations. I said book club because we're talking about book.
Cozy conversations on Wednesdays.
Yes. Well, thanks for joining us for part 2 of this and we'll see you, like I said, soon. We love you.
Love you guys. Thanks for hanging out.
Bye.